you ever wondered who that was messing up your hair or stealing your socks? Well, in Level 5's latest RPG, these are the beings known as yokai, strange apparitions based on Japanese folklore that are the latest in collectible monsters. The first Yokai Watch game just came out in Europe, but in Japan it's been nearly 3 years since this series exploded into the mainstream on a scale only relatable to the Pokémon franchise. Seriously, when I was in Japan last year, there was Yokai Watch merchandise everywhere. So, the big question most people had on their mind when this game released in the West was, will it be as successful over here? Well, I have my own thoughts on that, which I will save for the verdict. However, I will say one thing now. This game is ingenious in the way it appeals to children. When you first boot up Yokai Watch, you're presented with the option to pick your gender and name, a common feature in most monster collecting games nowadays. The boy is called Nate and the girl Katie, and their story begins with them catching bugs over the summer holiday for a school project. While the player is hunting in the woods, they stumble across what is basically an ancient gachapon machine, and end up releasing the ever-helpful yokai butler, Whisper. As a thank you for releasing him from his 200-year sleep, Whisper gives the player a yokai watch, and introduces him to the world of yokai, the mischievous spirits who are plaguing the residents of this Japanese suburbia. It is thanks to the mysterious power of this yokai watch that allows the player to be aware of the various yokai that are around them in their town. Majority of people can't see yokai, so now it's up to the player to team up with Whisper and help the people of Springdale with their various yokai related problems. While the story itself is pretty standard, the way it is told is what makes it feels different from the various other monster collecting games out there. Every chapter feels like a different episode of an animated show. A problem arises for our main character concerning a new yokai, and then they have to solve it. These problems can range from finding a lost ring for a friend, to saving the city from a horde of memory-sealing yokai. Every chapter feels distinct and separated, with only some key plot points retaining throughout. The main story itself doesn't even appear until over halfway through the game. This style of storytelling is one of the reasons that I think kids fell in love with this game in Japan. There are clear beginning and end points for each story, and it's incredibly easy to follow along. It's also a good way to slowly introduce the player to certain yokai, without having to worry about how their presence affects the grand scheme of things. While the main story really isn't anything groundbreaking, it was still enjoyable, and the interactions between Whisper and the player can be pretty entertaining at times. The game itself really did a good job of making me care about the residents of Springdale, and motivated me to want to help them, even if it took me about 5 to 6 hours to finally get interested. This game certainly has a bit of a slow start, with a pretty lengthy tutorial. However, once I was given the freedom to do what I wanted, with more options made available to me, I began to get sucked into this world more and more. So, I bet you're wondering how Yokai Watch plays compared to other monster collecting games, like Pokémon. Well, to be honest, I believe it's completely unfair to compare this with its competitors, as Yokai Watch tries to take a much more friendly approach to battling and recruiting. Literally. In order to recruit more yokai to your team, you require no special contraptions, just food and a friendly attitude. As you wander around town, the titular Yokai Watch will begin to resonate with certain areas in the field, and when you interact with these areas, you are guaranteed to run into a yokai. After catching them in your sight with the power of the watch, a battle will take place, and this is where the bulk of the game lies. During battle with a yokai that you might want to recruit, you have the option to give them food, and depending on some factors, the yokai you just defeated may offer you his medal out of friendship. Befriending yokai is the aim of the game here, and it certainly makes the yokai themselves feel more appealing. Rather than pitting animals against each other, it feels like you're fighting alongside a group of friends, which is emphasised even more by the fighting system. The player can only carry around 6 yokai at once, but in battle they can fight with 3 at a time, in a formation that feels like a mix of Pokemon's triple battles and rotation battles. This adds a layer of depth to the battles, as setting up the right formation of yokai based on their type and nature is the key to utilising your yokai friends effectively. However, this is about as deep as the battle system really gets, and this is both a plus and a negative in my book. During battle, your 3 yokai in the front lines will automatically perform actions based on their nature and abilities. every yokai can perform one of 5 actions during its turn: attack, guard, a special technique, inspirit, or just loaf around and waste their turn. What the player has to do is also a one of 5 things. The first is rotating the playing field to make sure you have the right yokai out to fight the right type of enemy. Next is performing a yokai's super move. Thirdly, you can purify yokai that get inspirited. There are also items that need to be used to heal your party or befriend enemy yokai. And finally, there is a targeting system, which can be used both to instruct your friends on who to fight, and also to burst special bubbles for a nice bonus. Managing all 5 of these is pretty simple, which makes it incredibly easy for children to pick up and understand. However, if you're looking for some complex competitive battle system, you probably won't find it here. I didn't dive too much into the more tactic-based battle mechanics, and found I had very little trouble defeating the enemies in my way. I won't call it a cakewalk, as that would be underselling the game, but I never found it to be too challenging either. And while I'm on the topic of complaints, I'm going to return to the befriending feature I talked about earlier, as I am not a big fan of it. It's certainly nice and different, however, the likelihood of having a yokai befriend you comes down to the quality of food, what sort of food they like, and everyone's favourite gameplay mechanic, RNG. You can do a few things to increase your chances, like having a yokai with the ability Popularity, but without that it really is just a shot in the dark sometimes, and I often found myself grinding through the same yokai and burning through all my food supply for hours, until they would finally decide that I was a nice enough person to hang out with. Outside of the battling and collecting, which really is the main focus of the game, you have the overworld to explore, which I actually quite enjoyed. The advantage of having smaller map and its episodic storytelling means that you end up becoming very familiar with the game's world, and by the end of it, I knew the town like the back of my hand, which made side questing and yokai hunting much easier. Speaking of the side quests, there are a lot in this game, and they provide you the perfect time to train your yokai as well as befriend some more. While most side quests bring something new to the table, they all follow a similar fashion. Either bring item A to person A, or bring yokai A to person A or B. While this may not sound very interesting to you, it's fine for the way the game is structured, as the various different yokai used in these missions allow them to remain interesting. However, there was a type of mission that I really didn't like, and that is the bug catching mission. In Yokai Watch you can not only hunt yokai, but you can also hunt bugs and fish. My problem with these missions is that finding the right insect can sometimes just be a case of awful RNG, with some barely showing up at all and with a very small and hard to judge catch wheel. I wasn't a fan of this, and I ended up giving up trying to catch the various bugs and fish, although it is not a feature that really detracts from the game as a whole, but I wish it had been a bit better. Just like other monster collecting games, your yokai will level up and evolve over time. Not every yokai can do this, however, and the actual pool that can seems to be quite small. There are multiple levels of evolution, however, as your yokai can not only evolve via leveling up, but also by fusing 2 yokai together, or by fusing a yokai and an item together. These last forms of evolution are not available to you straight away, and become a bit pointless later on into this game, but they can be a quick way of getting some strong yokai early on. One other unique gameplay mechanic is known as Terror Time. Sometimes randomly you will enter Terror Time, where a giant Oni will stalk you around the area it activates in, while you try and find the exit, all the while hunting down various treasure chests. But make sure you've got your sneak on, because you're gonna have to watch out for the Oni's reconnaissance yokai, because as soon as they spot you, that Oni will home in on you and he will not give up. Overall, the gameplay of Yokai Watch isn't very deep, which is great for a young audience, but someone who might want something a bit more complicated, it's not really for them. The game is filled with lots of polish, however, and the various side quests will definitely keep you going for hours. Speaking of polish, if you're a fan of that level 5 style, then Yokai Watch will not disappoint you. Out of everything in this game, the presentation is probably what I enjoyed the most. This game just oozes style from all its sides, so let's tackle this bit by bit. Focusing on the actual art style itself, Yokai Watch has this very cartoony and child-friendly style to it. Everything is made to look simple and appealing, with bright primary colours and easy to understand symbols making it clear where everything is and what is important. What I really enjoyed about how the game is shown are the little details. The fact that your character takes off their shoes when entering a building, that they wear clothes that appropriately match the weather, and even the game punishing players for walking across a crossing without waiting for the green man. These are all little things that most games would just ignore, but it really shows how much care went into this game that Level 5 really went the extra mile for authenticity. The music in this game is of a high quality that I have come to expect from a Level 5 production, and it really fits the overall tone of the game. I didn't find any of it annoying or unfitting throughout my whole experience, except for maybe that intro song. It is a bit cheesy, even for my tastes. Just like everything else in this game, Yokai Watch tries to make you feel like you are playing a cartoon, and all of the presentation works in harmony to produce a high quality experience. But it's not all perfect. I have two negatives with the presentation, and one is not really the fault of the game, considering that it comes from Japan. This game screams Japan, to an extent more so than most other games out there. While the localization really tries its best to remain really authentic to the source material, while making it still accessible for a Western audience, there is just some stuff that does not work as well over here. I'm perfectly fine with the setting being suburbia Japan, and I don't even mind that the collectible comic strips have to be read from right to left, like a manga. No. My problem was that knowing what food to give each yokai in order to befriend them felt like a massive stab in the dark. To a Japanese audience, this might not be as major of an issue, as they may be aware of what folklore the yokai are based on, and know what food connects the two. Heck, even I knew some of them myself. But the vast majority of times I was just picking a food item at random and wasting it because it didn't work. I would be fine with this if there was any hints at all in the game to what yokai like what specific food, but I feel like the only hint Level 5 had was one that failed to translate over to its Western release. However, this is a very minor point, and it's a bit nitpicky. The more pressing problem for me are unfortunately the yokai themselves. While I do have my collection of yokai that I really enjoy, about halfway through the game I began to realise that a lot of the later yokai ended up just being palette swaps of each other. I wouldn't have minded this as much had it only been a few times, but it happens a lot, and to me, it made a lot of these yokai feel less important, less unique. With that said, there are some yokai that I do feel are very appealing, especially the ones that play somewhat of an important role in the story. Neither of these problems are major detriments to the game, however. It's really just a matter of personal taste for the yokai designs, and that's fine. People are allowed to like what they want to like. It's just that for me, it was a bit disappointing. That said, this is just a small part of the presentation, which overall was pretty great. I had been interested in Yokai Watch ever since I saw its massive success in Japan, and now I understand how it reached that point. The game itself is well designed and made easily accessible for people of all ages, even if it does come off as a bit too simple at times. The game provides plenty to do with over 200 yokai to befriend and characters you want to get invested in. The presentation of the game is absolutely top notch, both from a visual and audio standpoint. It really is a great game that started a bit slow but eventually hooked me when all of its features began to become available. It's not perfect though, it relies a bit too much on RNG at times, and some of the yokai are pretty uninspired. But if you have a child, whether it be son, daughter or younger sibling, then I completely recommend this game. This game was designed to hook children in, and it really succeeds at that. Yokai Watch may not be as big of a blockbuster over here in the West as it was in Japan, mainly due to some unfortunate cultural differences that can't be avoided, but it's certainly a success. So maybe it will be just a matter of time until Jabanyan and Whisper get their own Macy's Day Parade balloon. I'm going to give this game a 4 out of 5 stars. It really was a great game all around. Not perfect, mind you, but still very, very enjoyable. Before I go today, I want to thank Nintendo once again for giving us another great opportunity to work with them in reviewing this game. I really hope this game does well for them, as well as the recently announced second one. I completely understand the popularity behind this game, and, to be honest, it does deserve it. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go hunt down a Casanova yokai. Wish me luck!